Good evening, Bahamas. Coming up tonight.
The Prime Minister brushes off concerns about the distribution of hurricane relief supplies.
Family members heartbroken as a man shot and killed on Monday morning.
The Prime Minister addresses plans for temporary accommodations on the islands of Abaco and Grand Bahama.
Our news is brought to you by Alive.
Welcome to Our News and thanks for joining us. I'm Kyle Joaquin. Topping news tonight, the government has issued an immediate ban on the construction of any new buildings in the 4 major shanty towns of Abaco. This comes after National Emergency Management Agency Director Captain Stephen Russell said people were spotted trying to set up house in those communities just days after Hurricane Dorian devastated that island.
And I advise that is not to happen at this point in time, not at all. So that goes for the mud, the pigeon pea, sandbank. There's no reconstruction in those areas at all.
Government has banned the building of any structures in the mud, pigeon pea, sandbank, and farm road communities. In a statement late Sunday night, the Ministry of Housing and Environment said, no person shall erect any new building or development for the purpose of residing or carrying out any commercial activity in the identified community areas. The purpose of the order is to allow for recovery efforts and the removal of storm debris related to Hurricane Dorian. It continued, the order is valid for 6 months, but may be extended for another 6 months as required.
Any structure tents, they all must tie into some sewage system or water system or lighting system. So they cannot just go about anywhere as they wish. And the Ministry of Works and Environment, their task is once debris is clear off, they would cordon off the area until we have a plan as to how we would rebuild those areas.
An Abaco shantytown assessment last year revealed that over 3,000 people lived in shantytowns on that island, many of them Haitian nationals. The government was set to deal with shantytowns on Abaco beginning July 31st of this year. An injunction by Supreme Court Justice Cheryl Grant Thompson prevented the demolition of shantytowns in New Providence. But this ban takes immediate effect. And during NEMA's daily press conference, Defense Force Commodore TELLIS BETHEL was asked about enforcement and the role his officers would play.
Defense Force would act as guided by NEMA and in collaboration with the police force. And right now we have not received any directives concerning that.
With the ban now in place, we asked Russell what happens to shantytown residents who wish to return.
The intended plan is there's no reconstruction in those areas, the mud, the pigeon pea, and sandbanks. That is the intended plan. We will find alternate locations to erect temporary housing for persons who need to work or live in Abaco moving forward.
Well, Prime Minister Dr. Hubert MINNIS defending his administration's response in the aftermath of Hurricane Dorian and the distribution of hurricane relief supplies. Jasmine Brown has that.
The Prime Minister says he is well aware of those concerns. However, he says his administration and NEMA are handling the situation.
I know many people concerned about donations and whatever received from various different entities, various different countries, etc. But I want to reassure them that, again, monthly assessments and reports would be presented to the payment nation as to monies donated, how it's spent, etc., so that you'll have complete accountability.
That was the Prime Minister's response to claims that hurricane relief supplies were not being properly distributed. Some evacuees have told our news team that the supplies were not reaching those who needed it. Responding to those claims, the Prime Minister insisted his administration has a handle on the distribution process and has implemented a tracking system.
We will be following through on those to ensure that happens so that there's no mobilization or movement of foods and other materials in the wrong direction or the wrong hand. We'll be very, very closely monitoring that situation.
Central Abaco was the hardest hit by Dorian, with thousands of homes and businesses being destroyed by the storm. Officials say thousands of people have also been displaced. The Prime Minister says the government is looking at alternative housing on that island.
They must understand that this is not going to be a quick fix. This would take years to build back, but in the meantime, the Abaconians themselves want to come home. We're getting ready. Many are requesting permission to allow them to bring trailer facilities within their compound so that as the residents start to rebuild, they themselves can live on the compound themselves so that they can help become involved and oversee the reconstruction.
Reporting for our News, I'm Jasmine Brown.
Police Commissioner Anthony Ferguson says an updated body count from Hurricane Dorian should be available later this evening. During a press conference at NEMA headquarters this morning, the commissioner explained why the death toll remains at 50 nearly a week after officials gave that figure.
We were stuck at 50. I said, on my way here, I got some information which I'm comfortable with. But as soon as that process is done, then I'll be in a position to make some comments. I don't have the luxury of speculating. And so I would not do something like that.
Early last week, the Commissioner of Police confirmed the death toll was 50, with 42 storm-related deaths in Abaco and 8 on Grand Bahama. Since then, there have been conflicting reports, particularly out of Abaco, where people claim to see bodies just about everywhere in the Marsh Harbor area. When our news visited days after Dorian, we saw for ourselves bodies scattered in and under the rubble.
I would really love to see those bodies. I honestly would really love to see those bodies. If they are there, we will pick them up.
But in responding to reporters Monday morning, Ferguson explained why that death toll has stood at 50 for nearly a week.
It stopped because then there were no recovery. But I can give you a bit of information that things are looking more hopeful today. As I'm getting information just before I came here that we have seen some semblance of body remains.
Despite this, reports of more and more bodies being found continue to come in. So the commissioner was pressed for more details, like just how much ground has been covered.
I believe if people see any bodies, I believe they will tell us and we will respond. But I have no information of people seeing bodies lying anywhere on Abaco and we have not responded.
The stagnant death toll also contradicts comments made on September 6th by Health Minister Dr. DUANE Sands, who said Prime Minister Dr. Hubert MINNIS would give daily 5 p.m. updates on the updated death toll.
We have agreed a process whereby the health team will compare the figures that it has with the Royal Bahamas Police Force so that we avoid giving any mixed information, and we have agreed to do that after 5 p.m. daily.
So who will be disseminating that information to?
The Prime Minister should probably be the one disseminating that information to the press.
But that was short-lived. NEMA Director Captain Stephen Russell says a crane is now on Abaco assisting with removing debris, which they believe may uncover more of the deceased.
They would have gone as far as they can with the resources they have, the sniffer dogs. But we now need to move through lifting those heavy equipment or containers out of the way, cars out of the way, so we can really get down to the ground level to see if there are anybody or deceased persons in those areas. That is our main task now moving forward this week here, to get to the ground level.
And as for reports of looting, Commissioner Ferguson says since the storm, more police are present on the island and arrests are being made frequently, and as recently as last night.
Plenty of officers. All over the place, we have plenty of officers. So you don't have to worry about numbers, but we have plenty of officers. And if you was in Abaco, and those of you being in Abaco, we haven't reduced the manpower in Abaco.
Well, Abaco evacuees could be headed home very soon, according to the Prime Minister, who said a man camp and tent city are expected to be built on that devastated island shortly. Giorgio Bain reports.
Prime Minister Dr. Hubert MINNIS addressed plans for temporary accommodations in Abaco and Grand Bahama, stating that his government is working to get persons back to a state of normalcy, which could see tents erected as soon as possible. With over 2,000 persons in shelters here in the capital following the devastation left behind by Hurricane Dorian, Prime Minister Dr. Hubert MINNIS said the government is working to get persons back on the island and back to work on those islands, which could be the site of a temporary tent city.
We're presently discussing the establishment of a man camp. The man camp would be able to house all staff, personnel, individuals, contractors and their staff, so that they can rebuild, clean up the island, etc. But we must also have what we call a tent city. It's not like the standard tents that you may be familiar with, but a tent city would have bathroom facility, each unit would have 2-bedroom facility. You have recreation facility, you have facility for police, you have dining facility, cafeteria facility, so it's really a city.
According to the Prime Minister, those temporary accommodations are expected to last anywhere between 6 months to a year.
We feel that it's essential to move the individuals from New Providence back to this environment, but everything, inclusive of schooling facility, educational facility, and that can only remain for a certain length of time because after 6 months a year, those individuals would become agitated.
As for those shanty towns where the government recently banned construction of any new buildings, the PM defended his government's decision to do so. He also said that those areas could be used as a memorial site.
Buildings on those areas were inferiorly built, and they were a setup for disaster, flooding, hurricanes, etc. And they were not built with any safety codes, and individuals' lives and health was in danger in those type facilities. We want to ensure that individuals are properly housed in proper facility, not exposed to all the elements, etc. So we're discussing the matter at Cabinet now. We think it may be appropriate to declare those areas some form of memorial site in respect for those who would have died in those particular areas.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Georgie O'Bain.
In other news, a security guard was killed early this morning in a drive-by shooting on Johnson Road. Jared Higgs has the details.
As you can see, family members gathered at the scene. They're absolutely confused as to what happened. The man had 2 kids, both of them on the scene early on Monday morning. Now, according to Chief Superintendent Solomon Cash, a vehicle pulled up, fired shots, and sped off.
Those family members told Our News that the victim is 45-year-old Jermaine Edwards, a father of 2 children and a security guard at Princess Margaret Hospital.
Shortly after 7 a.m., the male was in this area, standing. We suspect he was waiting on a ride, and he was approached by 2 individuals who were in a Japanese-type vehicle. They emerged from the vehicle and opened fire on him. We can tell you that we suspect that the victim is a security officer. They don't know exactly which company he works for.
Cash wasn't able to say whether police believe this killing was related to another shooting incident that left a man dead 12 hours earlier.
We received reports of gunshot at the First Street Coconut Grove area, where again, male was standing in that location when he was approached by persons in a Japanese-type vehicle who opened fire on him. That individual was transported to the accident emergency, Princess Margaret, where he later succumbed to those injuries.
According to Our News records, these latest killings bring the 2019 murder count to 70. There have been 7 homicides in the past 10 days. Cash was asked whether there was concern over this post-Hurricane Dorian uptick in killings.
We are always concerned about homicide. One killing is one too many. But I can say the more recent ones, we can see that there's a nexus with 4 of those particular homicides. We are currently following some significant lead on those ones.
Those 4 killings that Cash thinks are connected all took place within 40 minutes of each other on the night of September 6th. Reporting for Our News, I'm Jared Higgs.
All right, thanks, Jared. Still to come, healthcare facilities sustain hundreds of millions of dollars in damage. Plus, the Indian government donates to the Bahamas after Hurricane Dorian. Stay tuned.